I thought I knew what
Door's
petty
clear.
looked like
Heading out.
until my HOA
Careful,
turned my
the snow's
driveway
deep.
into their personal
I see.
snow
I'll
dump
check the drift.
and told me I should be grateful. Picture this. You're a widower, still grieving the wife cancer took last winter. You wake up to an 8-foot wall of toxic snow completely sealing your garage shut, trapping your 78-year-old mother-in-law inside with her heart medication running low. But here's what broke me. That poisonous slush was slowly murdering the memorial rose garden my Sarah spent her final 5 years creating. Every grain of road salt burning through the last beautiful thing she'd left me. When I called to complain, they fined me $500 for unsightly accumulation. Diesel fumes hung thick in the morning air as I stood there, work boots crunching through ice, watching neighbors cruise past in spotless BMWs like I was invisible. What would you do if they killed your wife's legacy, then billed you for the funeral? Drop your HOA nightmare below, because what I did next left 47 families stranded and made the evening news. My name's Wade Garrison, 52 years old, retired from City Public Works after 30 years of fixing everyone else's infrastructure problems. Never thought I'd need those skills to fight my own neighbors. Sarah and I bought our corner house in Meadowview Estates back in '98. Seemed like the American dream. Gated community, private streets, property values that only went up. The gate made us feel safe. Turns out, it just trapped us with the crazies. After Sarah passed last February, her mother Grace moved in with me. 78 years old, heart condition, needs her medications delivered daily. Sweet woman who spent 40 years teaching kindergarten. The kind of neighbor who bakes cookies for the mailman. Then Charlene Westbrook moved in. Real estate agent, drives a white Tesla she keeps spotless, moved here 3 years ago from some downtown condo. First week she knocked on my door with a clipboard and that smile that never reaches your eyes. Mr. Garrison, I'm Charlene, your new HOA board president. I couldn't help but notice your truck. She gestured at my 10-year-old Ford pickup like it was carrying the plague. Our community standards require vehicles to enhance property values. Perhaps you could park it somewhere less visible? I was still grieving Sarah, didn't have fight left in me. It's my driveway, ma'am. Well, yes, technically, but we're all in this together, aren't we? That phrase became her weapon of choice. We're all in this together. Except some of us were more together than others. December rolled around with the first real blizzard in years. 18 inches overnight, the kind of storm that shuts down the whole city. I woke up to the scraping sound of snowplows, metallic grinding echoing off the houses. But something was wrong. The scraping wasn't moving down the street like usual. It was getting louder, closer, focused right on my corner lot. I looked out the kitchen window and watched 3 dump trucks backing up to my property line. Not the street, my property, my driveway, the easement strip along my fence where Sarah used to grow her prize-winning roses. The driver of the lead truck hopped out, all bundled up in an orange reflective vest. He walked over to a woman in a white parka and designer snow boots. Even from 50 yards away, I recognized that perfect blonde hair. Charlene. She pointed directly at my memorial garden, the spot where Sarah's roses were sleeping under the snow. The driver nodded and climbed back into his truck. What happened next? I'll never forget. 3 trucks, working in coordination, dumped every ounce of snow from our private streets right onto my property. Mountain after mountain of white, mixed with sand, salt, and God knows what else from their commercial contracts. The chemical burn smell of road salt filled the air, mixing with diesel exhaust. By the time they finished, I had a 12-foot wall of snow blocking my garage, my living room window, and burying Sarah's garden under a toxic mess that would kill anything trying to grow there. Grace appeared beside me at the window, her worried voice barely audible. Wade, how are we going to get out? My doctor's appointment is this afternoon. That's when I realized what they'd done. This wasn't just dumping snow. This was trapping us, making us prisoners in our own home while they kept their precious streets pristine. I threw on my coat and boots, crunching through the snow to confront the crew, but they were already gone. Just me, standing in my buried driveway, looking at what used to be my wife's final gift to the world. The muffled silence of fresh snow was broken only by Grace tapping on the window, holding her empty pill bottle against the glass. That's when I knew this wasn't just about snow anymore. 24 hours later, the mail brought a Christmas present from my friendly neighborhood HOA. Notice of violation stamped in red letters across official letterhead. $500 fine for unsightly snow accumulation, and failure to maintain driveway access standards. The very same snow they dumped on my property was now somehow my responsibility to remove. Grace's medication situation was getting critical. Her delivery service couldn't navigate the snow maze blocking our driveway. I called around. Private snow removal wanted $800, cash up front. That's a big chunk of my fixed pension, but watching Grace worry about her heart pills made the choice easy. While I waited for the crew, I studied that violation notice. Something wasn't right about the signature on the bottom. I'd seen my own signature enough times to know it, and whatever was scrawled under homeowner agreement acknowledgement wasn't mine. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Thursday night in Charlene's living room. I showed up with my receipt for snow removal and a simple request: reimburse me for cleaning up their mess. Charlene's house smelled like expensive perfume mixed with coffee going cold. 4 board members sat around her marble dining table like they were conducting Fortune 500 business instead of arguing about snow piles. "Mr. Garrison," Charlene began, not looking up from her leather portfolio, "we've reviewed your request, and I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." She slid a document across the table. "Community Maintenance Agreement, signed by all residents upon purchase. Section 12 clearly states that homeowners agree to accept snow removal from shared community areas as needed." I picked up the paper. There was my address, my name typed neatly at the top, and there, at the bottom, was a signature that looked nothing like mine. The W in Wade was completely wrong. I always loop it. This one was angular. The G in Garrison was missing the tail I've made for 30 years. "That's not my signature," I said, loud enough that the whole table heard. Charlene's smile never wavered. "Are you calling us liars, Mr. Garrison?" "I'm calling that document fraud." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Board member Tom Henderson cleared his throat. "Now wait just a minute." "Board meeting adjourned," Charlene announced, snapping her portfolio closed. But here's what I remembered from my public works days. When dealing with bureaucrats, always follow the paper trail. After 30 years of municipal government, I knew that every legitimate document has backup copies, filing dates, and witness signatures. This community maintenance agreement had none of those things. I spent the next morning at the county courthouse digging through HOA filing records. Sure enough, no such agreement was ever filed. According to official records, the only snow-related provision in our original HOA charter was a requirement for professional removal to appropriate off-site disposal areas. Off-site. Not on Wade Garrison's property. But Charlene's power play was just getting started. 2 days later, Grace fell carrying groceries through the remaining snow maze. Bruised ribs, nothing broken, but at 78, every fall is serious. The paramedics had to carry her out on a stretcher because the ambulance couldn't get close to the house. As they loaded Grace into the ambulance, I noticed something that made my blood boil. 3 houses down, Charlene's driveway was pristine black asphalt. Not a flake of snow anywhere. Apparently, the community maintenance program was very selective about which community members received the service. That night, I sat in Grace's hospital room, holding her hand while she slept off the pain medication. The smell of antiseptic and worry filled the air as I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and called Jerry Patterson, an attorney friend from my union days. Jerry had helped us navigate the pension paperwork when I retired, and more importantly, he had a reputation for not backing down from bullies. "Jerry, I need to understand something about property rights and trespassing law." "What kind of trespassing, Wade?" "The kind where neighbors dump tons of trash on your land and then threaten you when you complain." Jerry was quiet for a moment. "Wade, you know that dumping anything on private property without permission is criminal trespass, regardless of what any HOA agreement says, right? Even if you had signed that document, which it sounds like you didn't, they can't override state law." That's when I learned my first important lesson. HOA agreements cannot supersede criminal law, period. Translation: if they're dumping on your property without permission, they're committing crimes, not enforcing community standards. Grace squeezed my hand in her sleep, and I squeezed back. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next storm hit in January, and Charlene decided to turn up the heat. This time, they didn't just dump street snow. 3 trucks rolled up carrying loads from their shopping center contracts. Sand, salt, chemical de-icers, plus whatever trash got mixed in from the parking lots. The pile grew to 12 feet high, completely blocking our driveway and living room window. Grace couldn't even see outside anymore. Our house went from cozy retirement cottage to snow prison in about 2 hours. But the real problem hit when our heating oil truck couldn't make the delivery. Our tank was nearly empty, and with outside temperatures dropping to 15 below, our house started feeling like a refrigerator. Grace's arthritis was acting up, and keeping the indoor temperature at 55 degrees wasn't helping her recovery from that fall. I called Jerry Patterson again. "They've escalated, Jerry. This isn't just harassment anymore. They're creating dangerous conditions for an elderly resident." "Wade, we need to document everything. Photos, temperature readings, anything that shows they're endangering Grace's health. And I want to schedule an emergency board meeting." "Already tried that. Charlene scheduled it for this Saturday." "Problem?" "My daughter's flying in from California for her first visit since the funeral. Only time she could get off work." Jerry was quiet, thinking. "That's not a coincidence, Wade. She's trying to isolate you, make you choose between family time and fighting back." He was right, but I wasn't going to miss seeing Lisa. First time in 8 months, and she was bringing the grandkids. Grace needed to see those kids, especially after her accident. Saturday came, and I walked into that board meeting alone. 47 residents packed Charlene's living room, and I could feel the tension thick as winter air. Some faces looked sympathetic, others openly hostile. Charlene had prepared a PowerPoint presentation called "Property Value Threats in Our Community." I kid you not, she actually used Comic Sans font, which told me everything about her attention to detail. Slide 3 featured a photo of my house labeled "Maintenance Concerns," right next to pictures of cracked sidewalks and dead trees. Like my 30-year-old home was somehow dragging down the neighborhood just by existing. "As you can see," Charlene explained, clicking through photos of various undesirable elements in our community, "certain properties require additional community support to maintain our standards." Additional support. That's what she called dumping toxic snow on my memorial garden. But the room wasn't buying it. I saw heads shaking, people whispering. Margaret Presley raised her hand. "Charlene, why is all the snow being dumped on one property? Seems like the burden should be shared." Charlene's smile tightened. "The Garrison property is most suitable for temporary storage due to its corner location and available space." Available space? That was Frank Rodriguez, whose house backed up to mine. "Wade's got the same size lot as everyone else." "Which brings us to our solution," Charlene announced, clicking to the final slide. "Motion to continue snow placement for community efficiency. All in favor?" 4 hands went up. Only Tom Henderson abstained, looking uncomfortable. "Motion carries, Mr. Garrison. We appreciate your continued cooperation." Cooperation. That's what she called burying my house in toxic waste. But walking home that night, I realized something important. The room wasn't united behind her. People were asking questions. Margaret and Frank weren't buying the company line. Even Tom Henderson looked like he was having doubts. I spent the next week doing research, and that's when I discovered something that changed everything. Spring soil testing from Grace's attempted garden showed salt levels 20 times higher than normal. But it wasn't just regular road salt. The lab report identified sodium chloride mixed with magnesium chloride and calcium chloride, commercial de-icing compounds that aren't supposed to be used in residential areas. This stuff was designed for highways and airport runways, not neighborhood streets. Jerry looked over the lab results and whistled. "Wade, this is environmental contamination. Those chemicals will kill anything trying to grow there for years, and some of these compounds, they're restricted for residential use." That's when I learned my second important lesson. Not all de-icing compounds are created equal, and some are actually illegal for residential dumping. Translation: check what chemicals are being used on community snow removal. You might be getting poisoned along with your plants. The humorous part? Charlene's PowerPoint included a stock photo labeled "Ideal Community Resident." Blonde hair, perfect smile, standing next to a luxury car, looked suspiciously like her real estate headshot from 2019. But the joke was about to be on her because I was done being the community doormat. Lisa and the kids had left that morning, and Grace was feeling stronger. Time to take the gloves off. February brought Charlene's boldest move yet, a formal proposal to make my suffering permanent. The letter arrived on HOA letterhead, professional as you please. Snow Depot lease agreement, offering me $50 per year to use the corner of my lot as the community's official dumping ground for all seasonal maintenance materials. $50. for destroying my property value and Grace's quality of life. The contract terms made my blood pressure spike, year-round dumping rights for a 20 by 30-foot area. Seasonal maintenance materials included sand, salt, debris, and whatever else they felt like storing. The dead zone would be permanent. Nothing would grow there for decades. Grace read over my shoulder as I studied the contract. "Wade, that's right where I was planning my physical therapy garden. Doctor said working with plants would help my arthritis." She was right. Losing that space meant losing the one thing keeping Grace mobile and motivated. Plus, having a permanent industrial dump in my front yard would crater my property value. Who wants to buy a house next to a chemical waste pile? But I was done reacting. Time to start researching. County courthouse records became my second office. 30 years in public works teaches you that paper trails tell the truth when people lie. I pulled every document related to our subdivision. Original plat maps, easement agreements, utility rights, the works. Most of it was routine stuff, but buried in the 1987 original subdivision plat was a detail that made me sit up straight. My corner lot didn't just have a house on it, it controlled something much more valuable. The exclusive access easement to every private street in Meadowview Estates. I called my surveyor buddy Mike Torres to double-check what I was seeing. Mike's been mapping property lines for 25 years, and when he came out with his equipment, what he told me was music to my ears. "Wade, this is incredible. Your property includes the only legal access point to all 47 houses in this community. See this line here?" He pointed to his survey map. "Everything behind this boundary is private streets owned by the HOA. But to reach those streets, every single resident has to cross your property." What does that mean legally? Means you're not just a homeowner, buddy. You're the gatekeeper. Mike explained easement law in terms I could understand. An easement grants use, not ownership. The agreement requires good faith from both parties. Violation of terms allows immediate revocation. But here's the kicker, Mike continued, measuring the exact boundary line. This easement was granted with a specific condition: neighborly cooperation. Your HOA charter requires residents to treat each other with respect and consideration. Systematic dumping of toxic waste doesn't sound very neighborly to me. That evening, I sat in Grace's favorite chair, looking out at the snow mountain blocking our view, holding one of Sarah's dried roses. The salt had turned it black, like everything else they'd touched. "She always said bullies count on decent people staying quiet," I murmured to the empty room. "Not this time, sweetheart." I started making calls, first to Jerry Patterson, who confirmed what Mike had discovered. The 1987 easement agreement included a good faith clause that the HOA had systematically violated. "Wade, this changes everything. They broke the contract first. You have grounds to revoke access entirely." "What happens if I do that?" 47 families become landlocked. Their private streets turn into very expensive driveways to nowhere. My third important lesson came from Jerry. Access easements can be conditional and revocable. Property owners aren't required to provide access to people who abuse the privilege. Translation: treat your neighbors like garbage, lose your right to cross their land. But I wasn't ready to drop the hammer yet. I needed evidence, documentation, and a plan that would make them fix the mess they'd created. I spent the next week calling equipment rental companies and researching property line marking requirements. Steel posts and heavy chains for property improvement projects, security cameras for home safety, an excavator with snow blade attachment for seasonal maintenance, all perfectly legal property owner activities. The plan forming in my head was elegant in its simplicity. They wanted to use my property as their dump? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I controlled their only way home. Charlene's lease agreement was still sitting on my kitchen table waiting for a signature. I picked up a pen and wrote across the bottom in red ink. Counteroffer. Remove all illegally dumped materials and pay $22,400 in damages. Then we'll discuss neighborly cooperation. Grace looked over from her crossword puzzle. Think that'll get their attention? Oh, I'm just getting started, Grace. Just getting started. The portable lights arrived that afternoon, followed by the security cameras. Time to document everything they did next, because I had a feeling Charlene wasn't going to take my counteroffer quietly. Late Tuesday night, alone in my kitchen with county records spread across the table, I finally understood the full scope of what I was dealing with, and what I was capable of doing about it. The original 1987 subdivision plat told a story Charlene clearly never bothered to read. When Meadowview Estates was developed, the city required all internal roads to be private streets owned and maintained by the HOA. But here's what makes it beautiful. Those private streets needed legal access to the public road system. That access comes through my corner lot. Not near it. Through it. Every single resident, every delivery truck, every emergency vehicle has to cross my property to reach their houses. Without my easement, 47 families would be trapped on an island of expensive asphalt leading nowhere. For 15 years, I'd been the nice neighbor who never asked questions, never charged fees, never enforced the easement conditions that required good faith neighborly cooperation. But they'd changed the rules of engagement when they started treating my property like their personal dump. Jerry Patterson's voice echoed in my head from our phone call that afternoon. Wade, you're not just defending your property rights anymore. You're holding all the cards in a game they didn't even know they were playing. The power dynamic had completely flipped. Every truckload of snow they dumped was another violation of the easement terms. Every fine they issued was more evidence of bad faith dealing. They'd been so focused on pushing me around that they never bothered to check whether I could push back, and push back hard. I called the municipal attorney's office the next morning. Tom Bradley handled property disputes for the city, and after 30 years in public works, we'd worked together on dozens of easement cases. Tom, I need you to look at something. Property owner versus HOA, systematic trespassing disguised as community maintenance. 2 hours later, Tom called back. Wade, this is a slam dunk. Your easement agreement is ironclad. These people have been violating the terms for months, maybe years. You have grounds to revoke access immediately. What would that mean practically? 47 landlocked properties, no mail delivery, no emergency services, no way in or out except hiking across your front yard. Their property values would collapse overnight. That's when I realized the true scope of what they'd done. By treating me like a powerless retiree, they could bully into submission. They'd handed me the keys to their entire community. Every house, every driveway, every perfectly manicured lawn was worthless without my permission to reach it. But I'm not a vindictive man, never have been. This wasn't about revenge, it was about respect, about getting them to understand that neighborly cooperation works both ways. I walked out to Sarah's ruined garden that evening, steel-toed boots crunching through the salt-crusted snow. The chemical smell still hung in the air, 3 months after the first dumping. Nothing would grow here for years. They forgot something important, sweetheart, I said to the darkness. Forgot that the quiet guy fixing everyone's problems for 30 years might actually know how things work. The plan crystallizing in my mind was simple, legal, and absolutely devastating. Use their own snow to seal their own streets. Turn their weapon into their prison. Make them understand that property rights aren't suggestions. They're the foundation of everything they claim to be protecting. I spent the next week documenting every violation, every illegal dump, every fine they'd issued for cleaning up their own mess. Photos, timestamps, GPS coordinates, building a case file that would make any attorney proud. But documentation was just preparation. The real work would begin with the next snowstorm, when I'd teach 47 families exactly what community cooperation looks like when it runs both directions. Grace found me planning in the garage that weekend, polishing Sarah's old garden tools while I thought through equipment rental schedules. She'd be proud, wouldn't she, Dad? Grace had started calling me that after Sarah passed. Proud that you're finally fighting back? Yeah, Sarah would definitely be proud. Monday morning, I started making the kind of calls that turn neighborhood disputes into local legends. First stop, Hendrick's Equipment Rental. I need an excavator with a snow blade attachment for property maintenance work. Nothing too big, but I need something that can move serious volume. The guy on the phone, Randy, according to his name tag when I drove over, walked me through the options. How much snow we talking about, Mr. Garrison? Let's just say my neighbors have been very generous with their winter donations. Randy chuckled. Ah, one of those situations. You want the Cat 314 then, hydraulic blade that'll angle for maximum displacement. Push 20 tons of snow like it's sandbox sand. Perfect. Next call went to Superior Fencing Supply. 12 steel posts rated for heavy-duty use, plus logging chains that could support the weight of a pickup truck. Property line marking project, I explained to the sales rep. Need everything clearly defined. The hydraulic whine of equipment being delivered filled my driveway Wednesday afternoon. Neighbors started paying attention when a flatbed truck dropped off an excavator that looked like it could reshape mountains. Charlene's Tesla slowed to a crawl as she drove past, her perfect blonde head craning to get a better look. Let her wonder. Jerry Patterson stopped by Thursday evening to review the legal strategy. We spread everything across my kitchen table: property surveys, easement documents, violation notices, soil contamination reports. Wade, this is bulletproof. 15 years of goodwill easement access, systematically violated by illegal dumping and harassment. You have grounds for immediate revocation plus damages. What about their argument that it's community maintenance? Doesn't matter. Community maintenance ends at property lines. Everything they've done on your land is criminal trespass, regardless of their internal HOA agreements. Jerry helped me prepare the formal notices, cease and desist letters, property damage calculations, documentation of every violation with photos and timestamps. Then came the financial reality check. 3 storms of private snow removal, $2,400. Sarah's Memorial Garden destruction, $3,000. Soil remediation for chemical contamination, $8,000. Driveway repairs from heavy equipment damage, $4,000. Legal fees, $5,000, and climbing, total damages, $20,400. Nearly half my annual pension spent cleaning up their mess. But the most important preparation was rallying the witnesses. Margaret Presley agreed to provide a written statement about the dumping pattern. Frank Rodriguez offered video evidence from his security cameras showing the targeted placement. Even Tom Henderson from the board quietly admitted he'd never seen documentation for their community maintenance agreement. Friday afternoon, Lisa called from California. "Dad, I've been thinking about what happened while we were visiting. This isn't right. They can't just bury your house and call it community service." "Don't worry, sweetheart. Your old man's got a plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind your mother would have used. Firm but fair, with consequences that fit the crime." That weekend, I set up the security equipment, cameras covering every angle of my property line, portable floodlights to illuminate nighttime dumping operations, everything time-stamped and recorded to cloud storage that couldn't be tampered with. Mike Torres came by Saturday to install the steel posts marking the exact easement boundaries. Each post sank 3 feet deep in concrete, with surveyors' flags marking the precise legal line between my property and their access rights. "Wade, this is professional-grade boundary marking. No one can claim they didn't know where your property ends." Sunday evening, the weather forecast made everything perfect. Major blizzard system moving in from Canada, 18 to 24 inches expected Monday night into Tuesday, the biggest storm in 15 years. I called Grace into the living room for a family meeting. "Grace, we're going to have visitors Tuesday morning, lots of them. Probably won't be entirely friendly." "What kind of visitors?" "The kind who'll finally understand that respect works both directions." She studied my face, seeing something she hadn't seen since before Sarah got sick. Determination. Purpose. The look of a man who'd remembered how to fight for what mattered. "What do you need me to do?" "Just stay warm and safe inside, maybe make some coffee. We might have reporters coming by." "Reporters?" "Grace, tomorrow morning we're going to give this neighborhood a lesson in property rights they'll never forget, and I guarantee it'll be worth documenting." That night, I checked the excavator hydraulics one final time, tested the blade angle for maximum snow displacement, confirmed the steel posts were properly positioned, everything ready for Tuesday morning's community education project. The metallic smell of hydraulic fluid mixed with the crisp winter air as I sat on Sarah's memorial bench, looking at where her roses used to bloom. Tomorrow, they'd finally get the respect they deserved, and 47 families would learn what community cooperation looks like when it runs both directions. Tuesday morning brought the storm right on schedule, and with it, Charlene's desperate attempt to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping away from her. The certified letter arrived at 9 a.m., hand-delivered by a nervous-looking kid from downtown. "Demand for immediate compliance," stamped across the envelope in threatening red letters. Inside, 3 pages of legal-sounding language that basically boiled down to, "Remove your barriers within 48 hours, or face $10,000 in fines plus attorney fees for blocking community access and endangering residents with illegal obstructions." Illegal obstructions, that's what she called properly marked property line improvements installed by a licensed surveyor on my own land. But here's where Charlene made her first critical mistake. The letter was signed by Anderson, Bailey and Associates, a legitimate law firm downtown. I recognized the name because they'd handled some municipal contracts during my public works days. Professional curiosity made me call them directly. Anderson, Bailey and Associates, this is Michelle. Hi, Michelle, this is Wade Garrison. I received a letter from your firm regarding an HOA dispute. Could I speak with the attorney handling my case? Long pause. Could you spell your last name, sir? Garrison, Meadowview Estates HOA matter. Another pause, then typing. Sir, I don't show any active files under that name. Could you read me the case number from your letter? I read the number. More typing. Mr. Garrison, that's strange. That case number format doesn't match our system. Could you hold while I check with Mr. Anderson? 5 minutes later, a man's voice came on the line. Mr. Garrison, this is David Anderson. I understand you received a letter claiming to be from our firm? Yes, sir. Threatening legal action over property line markers on my own land. Sir, we don't handle HOA disputes, and we certainly didn't send you any threatening letters. Could you fax me a copy of what you received? This sounds like someone is using our letterhead without permission. Bingo. Charlene had fabricated the whole thing. Jerry Patterson was practically giggling when I called him with the news. Wade, she just committed mail fraud using a fake attorney letterhead. That's a federal crime. But it gets better. We can use this to show a pattern of deception and harassment. That afternoon, the real attorney from Anderson, Bailey and Associates, called me back. Mr. Garrison, we're filing a complaint with the state bar about unauthorized use of our letterhead. We'd also like copies of any other documents your HOA has sent claiming to be from law firms. And turns out this wasn't Charlene's first attempt at legal intimidation. 2 other neighbors had received similar fake legal threats over minor violations. The state bar was very interested in systematic fraud, but Charlene's day was just getting started. Around 4 p.m., a genuine attorney did show up at my door. Older gentleman in a nice coat, carrying a legitimate briefcase with real legal documents. Mr. Garrison, I'm Robert Presley, attorney for the Meadowview Estates HOA. I apologize for disturbing you, but I need to discuss this property access situation. I invited him in for coffee, professional courtesy, and I wanted to hear what the real legal counsel had to say. Mr. Garrison, I'll be direct. Mrs. Westbrook contacted our firm about property access barriers, but she failed to mention certain complexities in your situation. What kind of complexities? Well, the systematic dumping of snow and chemicals on your property, for starters. The fake legal threats. The violation of your easement agreement terms. Mrs. Westbrook presented this as a simple property dispute, not a pattern of harassment and illegal trespassing. Robert Presley looked genuinely embarrassed. Sir, my client has created significant liability exposure for the entire HOA. Your easement rights are clearly documented, and the violations are extensive. I'm recommending immediate settlement negotiations. What kind of settlement? Full damages for property restoration, plus legal fees, plus a binding agreement that prevents any future dumping or harassment. My client needs to understand that continued violations could result in complete access revocation. I appreciated his honesty. Mr. Presley, I'm not interested in punishing the whole community for one person's poor decisions, but I am interested in respect and accountability. I understand completely. Mrs. Westbrook has been difficult to counsel. She seems to believe HOA authority supersedes property law. After he left, I called Jerry with the update. Their real attorney just threw Charlene under the bus, Jerry, recommended settlement, and said she's created liability for everyone. Wade, that's surrender. They know they can't win this legally. Question is whether Charlene will accept reality or double down on stupid. The answer came that evening. Emergency board meeting called for 7 p.m. at Charlene's house. Agenda item: immediate removal of illegal barriers by any means necessary. Any means necessary. That sounded like a threat to me. Time to make some final preparations for tomorrow morning's community education project. Wednesday evening brought the blizzard, and with it, Charlene's final, desperate attempt to prove who really ran Meadowview Estates. The snow started falling around dinner time, thick flakes that meant business. By 10 p.m., we had 8 inches on the ground and it wasn't slowing down. Perfect conditions for what I knew was coming. Around 11:30, headlights swept across my living room window. 3 trucks lined up on the street outside. The familiar orange and black of premier snow removal, Charlene's contracted crew. But this time, something was different. Charlene's white Tesla was parked right behind them, hazard lights blinking in the swirling snow. I grabbed my camera and winter coat. If she wanted to personally supervise this operation, I was going to document every second of it. The lead driver hopped out of his truck, guy I'd seen before, Miguel something, but instead of heading straight to work, he walked over to my property line where I was standing. "Mr. Garrison?" "Miguel Santos, crew chief. Listen, I need to tell you something before we start." "What's that, Miguel?" "Lady in the Tesla offered my guys a $500 cash bonus tonight. Said to dump extra loads, really bury your property good. Teach you a lesson about respecting the community." Miguel looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Sir, I got kids to feed, but this doesn't feel right. She wants us to dump sand, salt, and construction debris mixed with the snow. Target your garden area specifically. Construction debris, chemical de-icers, targeting Sarah's memorial garden for maximum damage. Miguel, you do what you need to do for your family. Just know that I'm recording everything, and none of this is your fault." He nodded and walked back to his crew. I appreciated his honesty, and it confirmed what I'd suspected. Charlene was escalating beyond simple harassment into deliberate property destruction. What happened next was like watching a military operation designed by someone who'd never heard of consequences. Charlene stepped out of her Tesla wearing a white parka and designer snow boots, looking like she was prepared to direct the D-Day invasion. She pointed directly at different areas of my property, giving specific instructions for maximum impact. 3 trucks worked in careful coordination. Load after load of snow mixed with sand, salt, and chunks of concrete from construction sites. The pile grew to 22 feet high, literally reaching my second-story windows. But here's what made my blood boil. Charlene was taking pictures, standing there in her perfect winter outfit, documenting the destruction like it was some kind of trophy moment. I filmed her directing the placement, zooming in on her hand gestures targeting Sarah's memorial garden. Clear evidence of intentional, systematic property destruction. Around 2 a.m. they finished. The largest snow mountain I'd ever seen completely blocked our house from street view. Grace couldn't see out any of the first-floor windows. We were effectively buried alive. I waited until the trucks left, then walked the perimeter of the dump with my camera. The chemical smell was overwhelming. Industrial de-icers mixed with God knows what other toxic waste from their commercial contracts. But as I documented the damage, I noticed something that made me smile in the darkness. Every single truckload had been dumped on my property. None of it on city streets, none on the easement access route. Charlene had been so focused on burying my house that she'd forgotten the most important detail. All of her snow was now on my land, my property, under my control. And tomorrow morning I was going to give it back to her, all of it, in exactly the place that would teach 47 families the real meaning of community cooperation. I spent the rest of the night checking equipment. The excavator started on the first try despite the cold. Hydraulic blade angled perfectly for maximum displacement. Steel posts and chains positioned exactly on the easement boundary line. Grace found me in the garage at 5 a.m. testing the equipment one final time. The hydraulic whine echoed off the walls as I practiced blade movements. "Wait, are you sure about this?" "Grace, they just spent 6 hours burying our house with toxic waste. Targeted Sarah's garden specifically for destruction. Offered cash bribes to make sure we suffered. This isn't about snow anymore. It's about respect." She studied the excavator, then looked at me with something I hadn't seen since before Sarah got sick. Pride. "Your mother raised you right, didn't she?" "She raised me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." "Then go show these people what standing up looks like." At 6 a.m., I fired up the excavator and began the most satisfying property improvement project of my life. Time to teach Charlene what community maintenance looked like when the community included Wade Garrison. The morning sun was just breaking through the storm clouds as I made my first pass at that 22-foot mountain of their generosity. 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and I was about to give 47 families the education of their lives. The excavator roared to life with that satisfying diesel rumble that means serious business. I'd been operating heavy machinery for 30 years, but this morning felt different. This morning, every movement had purpose. I started with the mountain closest to Sarah's memorial garden, the toxic pile Charlene had specifically ordered dumped on my wife's final resting place. The hydraulic blade bit deep into the snow, sand, and chemical mess, lifting tons of their community maintenance with each pass. But I wasn't just moving their snow, I was delivering it. Straight across my property line to the exact spot where the access easement began. The only route 47 families could use to reach the outside world. Every scoop of snow went directly into creating a wall across their private street entrance. By 6:30 a.m., I had a 6-foot barrier completely blocking access to Meadowview Estates. No one getting in, no one getting out. 47 families about to learn what being trapped in their homes felt like. The first neighbor appeared around 7 a.m. Frank Rodriguez, trying to leave for his job at the hospital. His pickup truck stopped 20 yards from the snow wall, emergency lights flashing as he realized what he was looking at. More cars started lining up behind him. Teachers who needed to get to school, commuters heading downtown, people with doctor's appointments and work meetings and normal Thursday morning responsibilities, all of them blocked by the same snow their HOA had dumped on my property. By 7:15, I had an audience of about 30 people standing in the street, looking at my perfectly legal property improvement project. Some were on phones calling work to report they'd be late. Others were taking pictures trying to figure out exactly what had happened. That's when the white Tesla arrived. Charlene's car slid to a stop and she practically fell out of the driver's seat, stumbling through the snow in those designer boots that weren't made for actual winter conditions. Her perfect blonde hair was already getting messed up by the wind. "What is this?" she screamed across the crowd, pointing at my excavator like I was operating a tank in a war zone. I shut off the engine and climbed down, steel-toed boots crunching on the snow-packed ground. The sudden silence was broken only by wind and the frustrated murmur of trapped commuters. "Morning, Charlene. Just doing some property maintenance, moving all that snow you folks generously donated to my land. You can't block community access. This is illegal." "Ma'am, this is my property. Your snow is now properly disposed of on the exact property line, just like your maintenance agreement requires." The crowd was getting bigger. Margaret Presley had arrived with her kids, who were supposed to be at school. Tom Henderson was there, looking embarrassed about the whole situation. Even some of the construction workers were watching from their trucks. That's when the fire department showed up. 2 trucks, sirens wailing, responding to reports of blocked emergency access. Captain Rodriguez, no relation to Frank, stepped out of the lead truck and surveyed the situation. "Who's in charge here?" Charlene jumped forward. "I am. I'm the HOA president, and this man has illegally blocked our community access." Captain Rodriguez walked over to examine my snow barrier, then looked at the steel posts marking my property line. 30 years of dealing with municipal disputes told me he understood exactly what he was seeing. "Ma'am, this appears to be private property. Are you saying this gentleman doesn't have the right to use his own land? He's blocking emergency access. To private streets? Well, yes, but..." The captain turned to me. "Sir, is this your property line?" "Yes, sir. Surveyor marked it last week. All snow was illegally dumped on my land, now properly relocated to the boundary line as specified in municipal code." Captain Rodriguez nodded. He'd seen enough property disputes to recognize the legal realities. "Ma'am, private property owners control access to private streets. If there's a dispute, you need to resolve it with him or through the courts." That's when the Channel 8 news van pulled up. Reporter Amanda Walsh jumped out with her camera crew, drawn by the spectacle of an entire neighborhood being held hostage by one man with an excavator. Perfect human interest story for the morning show. "Sir, I'm Amanda Walsh from Channel 8 News. Can you tell us what's happening here?" I looked across the crowd of 47 families, all trapped behind their wall of consequences, looked at Charlene, red-faced and furious in her impractical winter outfit, looked at the cameras rolling and the phones recording. Time for the mic drop moment I'd been waiting for. "Ma'am, for months my neighbors have been dumping toxic snow on my property, targeting my late wife's memorial garden, and fining me for cleaning up their mess. This morning, I'm simply returning their property to them. Community cooperation works both directions." The crowd went dead silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. "Now, anyone who wants this snow removed can start by removing the illegal dump from my memorial garden. Then we can discuss respectful neighbor relationships." Checkmate. 3 hours later, Charlene was writing a personal check for $6,000 while standing knee-deep in snow, surrounded by news cameras and 47 very unhappy neighbors. The emergency snow removal crew had given the HOA a choice: pay the full $18,000 for immediate access restoration, or watch their community stay trapped until spring. The HOA emergency fund only had $12,000, which left Charlene personally liable for the difference. "This is extortion," she muttered, hands shaking as she signed the check. "No, ma'am," Captain Rodriguez corrected. "This is consequences." By noon, 2 crews were working frantically to clear both my property and the street access. The news story had gone viral. Retiree traps entire neighborhood with their own snow, and my phone hadn't stopped ringing with interview requests. But the best call came from the HOA board. Tom Henderson, speaking for the remaining members, offered complete surrender. "Wade, we're prepared to accept your settlement terms: full property damage compensation, legal fees, and a binding agreement for future snow disposal. Charlene has been removed from all HOA positions. $22,400 for property restoration, plus $8,000 in legal fees. New easement agreement with strict terms: no dumping, no harassment, annual good faith review. And most importantly, respect for the memorial garden where Sarah's roses would bloom again." But money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was watching 47 families learn that community cooperation requires actual cooperation, that property rights aren't suggestions, that the quiet guy who fixes everyone's problems might actually know how things work. 3 months later, Grace's physical therapy garden was thriving. We'd used professional soil remediation to clean up the chemical contamination, and the settlement money allowed us to expand into the space where the snow dumps used to pile up. Grace was out there every morning, tending vegetables and flowers with the careful attention of someone who'd learned that good things can grow after bad things happen. Her arthritis was better, her spirits were higher, and she'd made friends with neighbors who stopped by to admire her work. I used $10,000 from the settlement to establish Sarah's Garden Fund, helping elderly residents maintain their landscaping when physical limitations or financial stress made it difficult. The fund partnered with the county extension office to provide free soil testing after our story revealed how many properties had been contaminated by improper chemical disposal. The Property Rights Defense Network launched from our kitchen table, with me as coordinator. Monthly workshops at the community center, teaching residents about easement law, HOA limitations, and how to document violations properly. Amazing how many people had been suffering in silence, thinking they had no power against bureaucratic bullying. Margaret Presley became our first success story, used what she learned to stop her HOA from forcing expensive lawn renovations. Frank Rodriguez helped 3 families fight illegal parking fines. Even Tom Henderson joined our advisory committee, bringing insider knowledge about how HOA boards really operate. But the sweetest victory was personal. Lisa started visiting monthly instead of annually, bringing the grandkids to help with the garden. Watching them plant seeds in soil that had been poisoned and restored gave me hope that good things really do grow from hard ground. Last week, a familiar white Tesla drove slowly past our house. New owner, different license plates. Charlene had moved away after losing her real estate license and facing multiple fraud investigations. The state bar took fake legal threats very seriously, especially when they involved elderly victims. Her replacement house had a prominent "for sale" sign in the front yard. Apparently, karma comes with real estate consequences. Grace found me that evening, sitting on Sarah's memorial bench, watching the sunset through healthy rose bushes that had been given a second chance to grow. "Think she'd be proud, Wade?" I looked at the garden, then at our peaceful neighborhood where residents now treated each other with respect instead of entitlement. "Yeah, Grace. Sarah would definitely be proud." Next week, we're helping a veteran in Riverside fight an HOA trying to ban his service dog. Bullies hate an informed community, but they really hate organized neighbors who know their rights. Drop your worst HOA nightmare in the comments below. Let's help each other fight back. And hit subscribe plus that notification bell, because justice served cold is always worth sharing. Remember, community cooperation works both directions. Sometimes people just need help remembering that.